Let's talk kettlebell swings during pregnancy. Should you do them? Should you modify them? Or just plain avoid them? Well, like everything to do with training during pregnancy, the answer is nuanced and highly individual. So in this video, I'll share my perspective on training the kettlebell swing during pregnancy. Of course, I'll give you specific reasons why I have this perspective, along with some fantastic alternatives and modifications. So if you want to train in the safest possible way during pregnancy by following training advice from a pregnancy and postnatal specialist with over a decade's experience working hands-on with the pregnant and postnatal population, then this video is absolutely for you. Now, as a standalone exercise, the kettlebell swing is an extremely versatile, time-efficient exercise that ticks the strength, power, and conditioning boxes all at once, making it one of those big bang for your buck exercises. But when it comes to the movement pattern and biomechanics of this exercise, the kettlebell swing is primarily a hip hinge movement rather than a squat. And this is a very important technique cue right there. So it's that powerful hip extension, almost like a snap from the hips, that should be the driver of the swing, making your glutes and hamstrings the prime movers. But the extremely dynamic nature of this exercise engages multiple muscle groups at the same time, with a particular focus on core and stabilizing muscles. And the swing itself creates quite a unique force and torque pattern on the body. So given all of this, you can see why it's a really popular choice for power and conditioning sessions. But here's the thing. During pregnancy, as much as you're still so strong and so capable, I personally believe that your training goals require a slight shift that honors the changes your body is going through in creating new life. When it comes to the kettlebell swing during pregnancy, there are a few things we need to consider. The change in intra-abdominal pressure, the shift in center of gravity, the hormonal impact on joints, but more specifically joint laxity and instability, the changes to your core and pelvic floor, and we can't forget how metabolically taxing pregnancy is. In fact, pregnancy is the most metabolically challenging thing a human body can do. So energy systems and fatigue need to be considerations as well. And before we move on, I want you to take a moment and reflect on whether you've noticed any of these changes in your own body throughout your pregnancy journey. Just check in with how your body feels different now compared to pre-pregnancy. So now that you've done that, we're going to look at each of these points in greater detail. So when it comes to kettlebell swings, intra-abdominal pressure, and the pelvic floor, the explosive nature of this movement causes quick pressure changes or rapid fluctuations in intra-abdominal pressure and a rapid loading and unloading on the pelvic floor. So when your baseline intra-abdominal pressure is already elevated from the pregnancy and your pelvic floor is already under increased stress from supporting the extra weight of your growing baby, the rapid pressure changes can strain an already stressed out system. And a huge consideration when training during pregnancy is maintaining neutral intra-abdominal pressure to help protect your pelvic floor from pelvic floor dysfunction and your abdominal wall from abdominal separation. And if you've been following me for a while now, you'll know that pregnancy alters a woman's biomechanics. The growing belly shifts your center of gravity forwards and upwards, and this change affects both balance and posture. And when it comes to kettlebell swings, they actually require quite precise control of your core and center of gravity to remain upright with good technique. So the changes to your center of gravity and the anterior pelvic tilt that follows can impact your ability to maintain proper technique in the kettlebell swing, which could potentially increase your chances of hyperextending into your lower back, which is an area that's already under considerable strain during pregnancy. And this is a similar concern when you look at the effects of hormones on joint stability, but particularly in your pelvis during pregnancy. When it comes to training during pregnancy, it's my belief that you want to keep your pelvis as strong and stable as possible. So when you're looking at dynamic movements like the kettlebell swing that involve rapid loading and unloading of joints, it's this combination along with an anterior pelvic tilt that again can potentially have you hyperextending into your lower back or incorrectly loading your joints. Of course, a lot of this has to do with the changes going on in your abdominals during pregnancy. And we know pregnancy stretches your abdominals, altering how your core functions, making it much harder to engage the core correctly. So when you look at an exercise that requires strong coordinated core activation, you can see how this may lead to an inability to maintain neutral intra-abdominal pressure, placing increased load into the abdominal wall, which can have a carry-on effect to abdominal separation. And while I'm a huge advocate of conditioning sessions during pregnancy and believe birth is an athletic event that needs to be trained for, and part of which is maintaining your cardiovascular fitness, but I'll typically choose exercises that are less dynamic, which decrease the chance of your form breaking down as fatigue sets in. And last but not least, we can't forget your bump, right? So when swinging a kettlebell, besides from the top arc of the swing, you want your hands as close to your pelvis through the movement as possible. And this just isn't possible when you have a bump in front in your way. So when it comes to training the kettlebell swing during pregnancy, because of the extremely dynamic nature of this exercise that requires multiple muscle groups working together at the same time, along with the swing itself, creating unique force and torque patterns on the body, I typically won't program this particular exercise during pregnancy. But remember, there are always going to be grey areas and outliers when it comes to training during pregnancy. And a perfect example of this is a professional dancer that I coached through her pregnancy who had incredible body awareness. Her ability to maintain connection to her core and adapt and change her breathing and muscle activation patterns to ensure that she maintained neutral intra-abdominal pressure at all times meant that I was able to program a variation of the kettlebell swing for her. And I'll use this in the examples coming up. And of course, the first kind of 12 to 16 weeks of pregnancy is somewhat of a grey area, as you can often continue to train similar to your pre-pregnancy training programs, and you don't have a significant bump getting in the way or placing a lot of pressure on the abdominal wall and pelvic floor. So if you've already mastered your kettlebell swing technique, you're confident with your form, and they were part of your pre-pregnancy programming, I'd say that you can continue to train them. However, you also need to be very mindful as your pregnancy progresses of all of those things that we've just discussed. And it's also crucial to listen to your body and be prepared to modify or stop if you experience any discomfort or if your healthcare provider advises against it. So of course, if I'm telling you not to train the kettlebell swing during pregnancy, you're probably wondering what you can do instead. Well, of course, I've got 3 great alternatives, starting with the dumbbell swing. And this is a good alternative for those who have an advanced training age, have mastered the kettlebell swing technique, and are confident with their form and able to maintain neutral intra-abdominal pressure throughout the entire movement. In fact, this is the exact alternative that I use for the professional dancer that I mentioned earlier, and something I might use as an alternative for someone who, say, typically Olympic lifts pre-pregnancy. Then of course you have the barbell RDL. So the barbell RDL targets similar muscles while taking away the dynamic nature of the hip hinge. So the main reason I like this as an alternative is because, like the kettlebell swing, you don't touch the ground between reps, and it keeps constant tension on the legs, hips, and erector spinae. And of course, the landmine good morning. And for those of you who know me, you'll know how much I absolutely love the landmine, especially during pregnancy. So for me, this is a no-brainer as an alternative to a kettlebell swing, as it targets similar muscles while taking out the dynamic nature of the swing. And the front loading helps act as a counterbalance, making it easier to push your hips back and up. And the amount of core engagement that you get with this is quite high, so it's another plus for pregnancy. And we know that pregnancy affects intra-abdominal pressure and core function. It changes your center of gravity and decreases joint stability. So all of these factors make kettlebell swings a challenging exercise during pregnancy. And it's because of this that I typically won't program this particular exercise during this life phase. Instead, exercises like the 2x dumbbell swing, a barbell RDL, and a landmine good morning work similar muscle groups without that dynamic nature of the exercise. So that's it from me. I really hope this video helps you make more informed choices about your training during pregnancy. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so feel free to drop me a comment below. And if you want more in-depth pregnancy-specific content, feel free to apply to my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. The link is in my bio.